Hey, we're back with the three-time now champ, James Evans with UFC Deluxe. The two of us again running the show. So it should be pretty quick. We don't have shouldn't be wasting too much of anybody's time here, but we got another good card coming up. Frankie Edgar, Pedro Munhoz, but the whole card we got stacked with, I think, what's going to be more of the same finishes in this smaller octagon. I hope it's been fun to watch. So we won't waste any time. I mean, unless you have actually, I did want to ask you. You added a new member to your team a little bit, right?
Yeah, literally, I just got a DM about just under a week or two ago from a fellow sort of trainee journalist who's also a student asking to do a bit of work. His name's Nathan Russell. And yeah, literally just came out of the blue, wants to do a bit of work. And I said, yeah, you're more than welcome to. And I also just shouted out Rambling and Gambling as well. And, here we are. He's part of the team now. He told me he'd love to do some content with you guys. So yeah, here we are. It should be a good addition.
Yeah, Tony had just said something to me earlier today about it, and he said to bring it up. And yeah, I definitely want to get to know him, and it's awesome. Getting to kind of build a team together and just attacking this thing from 10 different ways, and just trying to kind of build our respective names in the community. It's been fun. It's been fun for sure. I'd like to get a win under my belt, though. If that's not too much to ask, I guess that's on me, though. So let's
maybe you might get it this week.
It's a new week. Let's get it started. First off, first fight of the night, we've got a familiar name, Timur Valiev versus Trevin Jones. Could be a pretty exciting first fight to the night. I mean, I think you've got definitely a clash of styles. But go ahead, as usual, take the lead.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like you said, it's primarily a clash up in styles. I think we all know coming into the octagon, we all know what to expect from Valiev. He's just got that sort of high offensive skill, and he's just got he's one of the more terrifying Dagestanis out there. He's just his scrambling, his balance, and just his all-round defensive skill on the sort of ground. He's just second to none. I think he's certainly been a breath of fresh air. He's been a bit unlucky recently with a couple of fight cancellations. And originally, I believe it was supposed to be Mark Striegel, and he had to pull out. I think he tested positive for COVID. So it's not been the easiest of runs for Tamir on fight week, but obviously he's got an opponent now. And I think we'll see more of the same with him in this fight. Obviously, like you said, it's a clash in styles. We'll not expect from Trevin as well going forward. But if obviously Timur can get the fight to the floor early on, I reckon we can sort of see an extremely aggressive Timur on the mat. And I'm going to go for a decision victory for Timur on this one.
Yeah, I was torn. I like Timur in the fight. Trevin, I think, has fought similar style fighters in the previous organization that he fought in, and he held his own. But Valiev is just a little bit of a different class, I think. You see guys that can wrestle, and then it's they're the next echelon, and it's the same thing with the grapplers. I've got Valiev by decision as well. I contemplated throwing a submission victory in there, but the more I watch Jones, he fights him off well. I mean, he's sufficiently trained on the ground, obviously, as most of these guys are. But I've got Valiev by decision as well. Second fight of the night, Carlton Munhoz versus Matthew Simmelsberger. This one was another switch up in the card, right? Last second. I know that I'm trying to think originally. It was.
I think it was Philip Bro.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I had kind of started to look at that fight, and then depending on where you're looking online, it'll tell you one thing or another as far as who's pulled and who's not. So I was kind of last second looking at this one, and I feel like I'm wavering a little bit. But my initial pick was Munhoz by decision. I looked on Tapology, and that's, overwhelming odds that they're throwing that out there. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. I mean, just trust the community on this one a little bit to know a little more than I do. Oh, you there? Yeah. So anyways, but go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry. No, you literally cut off for a second.
Yeah. Sorry, no, I'm totally agreeing with you on my screen too.
No, I'm in total agreement with you. I think with Smelsberger, I think there is a sort of path to victory for him in a way. I think when you look at Munhoz, he's not the hardest man to hit, so there could be ways in which Matthew could exploit little holes in Carlton's game, but nonetheless, I think we will sort of see not necessarily a dominant victory for Carlton, but I think we will see an entertaining bout between the two. We know what to expect from both fighters. Matthew's pretty well-rounded, but I've got to back Carlton on this one. He's 10-1. He's certainly one to watch out there right now. But I'm going to go for a decision victory as well for Munhoz.
And is it respective? Is it debuts for both fighters in this card or in this matchup? Do you know?
I believe so. From the top of my head, I think one's coming off the CFFC. Yeah, I
thought so as well. This next fight I'm excited to see too, because you've got a matchup between Ike Villanueva and Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright we've seen before against Fluffy Hernandez. Obviously that fight didn't go his way, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, he showed in that first 30 seconds a lot of what he brings to the table. It's just a matter of, in my opinion, can he keep it on the outside? Is he going to allow himself to get backed up in the cage like he did in that last fight? Because dirty boxing did not seem to be his strength, obviously, looking at the result of that fight. But Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is no joke either. So you can't just, sell him short and say that he just got caught because he's, not good enough or something. It's high-level competition in there at all times. So I'm excited to see. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of an underdog pick here, I guess. I'm going to take Villanueva by second round TKO just because of what I saw in that fight, in the Contender Series fight that Jordan Wright had. But I am excited to see, and I'm a little bit hopeful to see him come out and do a little better.
Yeah, like you said, he'll be making his debut, and it'll be interesting to see how well he fares against a former middleweight himself. Obviously, Wright's predominantly a middleweight. He's stepping up to 205, and I believe Isaac Villanueva was originally a middleweight himself. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, he hasn't got the best of records under his CV, but when you look at Isaac, I mean, I'm the type of person whereby if someone's stepping in on short notice against a guy who's had the whole sort of training camp to prepare, who's had to put in the effort within the past several months, I'm more leaning towards that guy. And it's the future. There is some sort of future with Jordan Wright. He's on a good sort of run at the moment. I think, doesn't he train with Jack Wink? I believe so. At the top of my head. So obviously he's got high-level athletes and high-level coaches surrounding him, and even if this fight doesn't go his way, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of other options for Jordan Wright. Give him a full training camp, so we might see a Jordan Wright in his next fight. But it's certainly a tough one to take on the short notice against a guy like Isaac Villanueva. So I'm going to I reckon this fight will last a bit earlier than your prediction. I'm going to go for a first-round TKO for Villanueva.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And we'll go right into the next one. Let's see. We've got Dwight Grant versus Kalen Bourne. Man, Dwight Grant, he looks like a specimen. I was just looking at his last couple of fights. I mean, the guy is a beast. He's an absolute monster. The body snatcher. There's a reason that he's got that nickname. You know what I mean? He tends to – I love when a guy does something like that. He makes that his title. And then goes out there and just lives by it. And he definitely does that. But I'll let you go ahead and take the lead on this one and kind of let me know what you think.
Yeah, he's certainly a very he's certainly an entertaining character, isn't he, with Grant. I think he dropped a decision defeat to Zach Ottawa in his UFC debut, I believe, and that was his first loss since 2011. I believe at the top of my head, this is his first fight in 16 months since the decision over Alan Juban. So it'll be interesting to see how he's prepared for a guy like his opponent this weekend. So he's very explosive in terms of his approach. I mean, he's not one to sort of be cautious and feel like his opponent early on. He's willing to let his hands go, and once he does let the hands go, he's very sort of aggressive in terms of his approach, and he's very hard hitting himself. So in that sort of sense, I think he'll get the first round TKO on this one, maybe even a knockout.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And I think it's if I'm not mistaken, I think he's got either a 4 or 5 inch height advantage in the fight. 6'1". So, I mean, the length I think is going to play a big part. We've seen that. Small cage, long arms, long limbs, a guy that can use all 8 limbs. he's going to be dangerous in there. And yeah, I agree. I think we could see an early KO. I would not be surprised at all. Like you said, a first round. The next fight as well, you've got two killers, Austin Hubbard and Joe Selecki, another two absolute beasts in the octagon. Not guys that you're surprised to see that they do this for a living when you see them walk in. I mean, they definitely look the part. But yeah, go ahead.
Again, sort of like a clash up in styles, if you will, in a sense. I think I'm a big fan of Joe Selecki. I've spoken to him recently, and I've never seen somebody more motivated for a fight in my life. He was obviously gutted that he couldn't fight Austin in June, and obviously Max Roscoff stepped in, and unfortunately had that sort of controversial incident where he just decided to quit after 2 rounds and then got released. But again, you know what to expect from Austin Hubbard. His chances lies in a sense where he just has to sort of wear down Selecki early on in his attacking ability in terms of the striking department. Obviously, he does have the edge in that aspect, in my personal opinion. Whereas with you know what to get with Joe Selecki. I mean, his submission ground game is his bread and butter, really. I think almost just over half of his wins have come via a form of submission. I think just based on his sheer sort of takedown ability and his sort of great background in that sort of department with his BJJ, etc., and what have you, I think if he gets a fight down to the floor early on, I think we can see Joe Selecki frustrate Austin for the full 15 minutes. And with that, I'm going to go for a Joe Selecki victory by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see it. We spoke about it a little bit on the last episode with our boy Jimmy Flick. I mean, when you have a guy that's just got that next level grappling game, again, in the smaller cage, I mean, we have to keep bringing it up because when you have this clash of styles and you have a dominant grappler or somebody, that's, like you said, has the ability not just to do well when they get to the ground, but has his own way, in different ways that he can take it there himself. You see some guys that seems like the only way they ever get to take advantage of that jiu-jitsu is they'll start throwing wild kicks or something like that and honestly just hope that they get taken down and then try to reverse it, as opposed to he can initiate the takedown, use his striking to set it up. I think that you're going to see him do that, get it to I think he'll probably take it to the ground in 2 out of the 3 rounds, if not all 3. I'm going to take him by unanimous decision as well. I'm not to totally just take that off of you, but yeah, I think he could finish the fight just as easily. You know what I mean? If he's got him in a dominant position and he really holds pressure, I could see him really wearing him out, but we'll see. I've got him by the decision as well, which brings us to our first female fight of the night. We've got a clash up of 14-5 versus 7-1. Mizuki Inyo versus Amanda Lemos. Amandinha. It's going to be, I think, more exciting than probably the last 2 cards of female fights that we've had. This fight right here, Amanda Lemos is going to get busy, I think. I look for a finish here from her. I know that it's a little bit outside of what I've seen online. I've seen a lot of decision victories again, or through Tapology at least. Everybody predicting the decision, which it's hard to argue. I mean, you see it time and time again. I just see something a little bit different with her. I think that in her last fight, I saw somebody that's looking to move forward and get this thing finished. And I think she really wants to make a name for herself here. And I think she's probably in the UFC for a long while to come, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But unfortunately, I'm probably going to have to go with a lot of the maths on this one. I think you look at Amanda on this one. Unfortunately, obviously, she lost in the UFC debut, and I think she got suspended then for a couple, 2 years, I think. And yeah, again, she put in a good performance in her last bout, and she's knocked 5 out of her 7 victories in the octagon. She's knocked 5 out of her opponents. So it'll be interesting to see where she's at, because obviously she's fought about 4 minutes in the past 3 years, which doesn't bode well on paper. And obviously the sort of ring rust factor goes into it. But I think whether we get a finish or not, I don't know. I mean, it might be a case of Lemos sort of trying to sort of get through the first round, not just, get herself and show flaws with Mizuki. I don't know. From my personal opinion, I think with Mizuki, obviously, we did talk about, and particularly you said how she's knocked out 5 out of her 7 victories in her opponents, whereas with Inui, I believe she has just a very slight edge in terms of wherever the fight goes, whether it be a striking, in and out striking, and a sort of submission ground game. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to see Amanda sort of mix it up and sort of come out wild in terms of her approach, and sort of we'd expect the unexpected. Well, we'd see something very unpredictable with Amanda in terms of her approach. Whether or not we'll get that, personally, I don't think we will. I think, unfortunately, this one will go the decision. I'm going for an Inui via decision, unfortunately.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think the long time off is always fun, and it's always it's a little bit different for the opponent as well, because they don't have anything to go off of. So it's an opportunity to come out and be somebody totally different than you've ever been in your previous fights, so to speak. But like you said, that you have to take advantage of the opportunity given. Some fighters just are who they are, and they're not really going to ever change that much in a way that, they might not think that it really helps them in the long run.
Yeah.
But that's the last prelim fight of the night. Brings us to the main card, the first fight of the main card, Daniel Rodriguez and Takashi Sato. We just saw Takashi Ten Sato. I mean, he's absolutely dangerous on the feet. He's got his work cut out for him here, though. I was 50-50. I could not get enough film on these guys, though. I was just loving watching both of them. Every time they step in the octagon, both of them, or every time they step into a cage, it's a war. I think I want to believe everybody on the Rodriguez hype right now. He's definitely impressive. There's no doubt about it. But I'm going to go and take Takashi in this one by KO. I need an underdog win. And I think that he definitely has the power in his hands. If he can keep distance and then strike, get in and out when he, needs to counter, I think he's definitely got the power to put anybody out. And I was just really impressed the last time I saw him fight, and that's my pick.
I think one thing's for certain, this fight's not going the distance. Someone's going to get knocked out. With Rodriguez, he just carries some serious heavy power in those hands, but obviously the same goes for Takashi as well. When you look at it on paper, it's going to be it's so 50-50 on this one. I'm so torn on this fight. I think Sato as well is a pretty skilled striker. He's very quick in terms of his striking. I think he's got the speed advantage in terms of his attacking approach, but that sort of could play into Rodriguez's hands with his timing and how he sort of takes those shots and how he sort of connects and counters. I like Sato's punching power and his sort of. I'm a big fan of Sato. Don't get me wrong. I think he has the ability to sort of outstrike and outpick apart his opponent, but I'm more for the Daniel Rodriguez hype in this one. I think he's durable, and he's certainly got the heavy, hard hitting hands. I believe he's got the height and the reach advantage over Takashi, which for a guy in terms of two stylistic matchups in terms of their striking, the height and the reach advantage is certainly going to sort of favour the Daniel Rodriguez in this fight. But you cannot rule out Takashi's speed in terms of his attacking approach. Like I said, we're not going to get a decision victory for either fighters. I think this one does go. This one does go inside the 15 minutes. I think Daniel Rodriguez will get it by a second round TKO.
Yeah, it's all going to be about how, man, that smaller cage is so fun to see how these strikers, some have such a unique ability to cut the cage off as opposed to chasing their opponent. And that'll definitely play a role. Takashi, if he can put pressure forward and be the one advancing, angles, the way his striking is, being able to cut angles and cut him off will play a huge part, I think, in this fight, or could play a huge part at least. Next fight, we've got the second female fight of the night, Mariah Agapova versus Shayna Dobson. Go ahead, take the lead.
You got to feel sorry for Dobson on this one, with no disrespect. I mean, the UFC are taking a mick with this one, aren't they? I think the majority and the masses across the MMA community are sort of going to favour Mariah in this one, and rightly so. She's not going to have the sort of illustrious sort of size advantage, but Agapova's sort of just her aggression in terms of her approach will sort of carry her to a fairly comfortable victory with no disrespect to Dobson. It's quite clear that Agapova is talented. She's got the potential, and I think rightly so. The UFC is sort of taking it step by step. They're not going to throw into the deep end just yet, because obviously you look at the 125 division right now. Valentina is an absolute killer, and obviously they're not going to want to throw her straight into the deep end just yet. They're going to take it step by step. You look at Mariah, she's obviously, in terms of approach, I'm a big fan of hers. I don't see how Dobson gets this one done. I'm literally thinking whether she gets it done early, Mariah, or whether she gets it done late. I just think her sheer aggression, maybe in the first round, well, not necessarily she won't get the finish of the first round, but I think she'll put a lot of the pressure on Dobson early on, get it past this first round, and I think she'll just pick her apart from then on. And I think we may see a second round technical knockout in favour of Agapova. I just think she's just too aggressive and more of a better, well-rounded fighter than Dobson. No disrespect, of course.
Yeah, and Dobson, like you said, it's a tough draw. I mean, unfortunately, has lost 4 of her last 5, and then has to go into a tough fight like this. But I actually also had a second round victory. For Agapova. I've got it by submission. I think she probably takes the back at some point in the second round and sinks in the choke. Honestly, I think, like you said, it could be a very dominant and exhausting first round. If this thing goes how Agapova wants, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, like you said, she tends to impose her will on her opponents. I think that's what we're going to see. So 3 left. Marcin Prachnio versus Mike Rodriguez. What you got on this one?
I'm probably going to go for Mike on this one. I think when you look at Prachnio, he's knocked out some very special, talented fighters across the one championship promotion, and I genuinely don't know what happened to him in his sort of UFC career. I don't think he's fared the best. It'll be interesting to see how he sort of can approach a guy like Rodriguez, who sort of, he came through the Contender Series as sort of a hot prospect, but he's yet to find some sort of consistency in terms of his results. And I think in terms of this one, I'm probably going to go for Mike Rodriguez for a second round TKO. I think technique-wise, he's got the edge over Marcin, and I just think he's the better fighter in that sort of department. I just don't see a path to victory for Marcin Prachnio in this one. I do see Mike Rodriguez by a second round TKO.
Yeah, the reach is what really just jumps out to you at the card on here, or on the card to me. 82.5-inch reach for Mike Rodriguez versus 74-inch reach. I think that he takes it. I think you could very well finish the fight. I'm gonna take Mike Rodriguez via decision. I think it could be unanimous as well. Honestly, I think that on the feet he's going to be superior. I don't see, and I think the striking is going to be enough to keep anything else at bay. To be honest, I don't see him being too having too much of a problem with the stand up, and I think he's going to be able to get it done. Which brings us to an absolute thriller. Another one that I don't see any way that this thing gets through 3 rounds. These guys are just too dangerous in too many ways. Oven St. Preux versus Alonzo Menifield. There's 10,000 different ways this fight can end that I can imagine before a decision. But I'm going to let you go ahead and lead on it.
It's so tough, man. Honestly, I think I was on a show earlier and I said crazily, I didn't believe my prediction at the time. I said OSP by decision. But then when you look at it on paper, I've had time to look back on it and think, this fight is not going to the distance at all. I think you look at Alonzo Menifield on paper, he's just so aggressive and so powerful in his approach. And I think with OSP, it's very clear. You know what to expect with OSP. He doesn't want to be, from his perspective, he doesn't want to be standing, and he does not want to strike with Menifield at all. Like I said, he's too powerful, and he can knock you out in an instant. It was a shame with Menifield in his last fight where he got I think it was his first professional defeat of his career, I believe, at the top of my head. I hope from sort of his perspective, he's learned from that mistake, and he's sort of gone back to the drawing board and made some tweaks in his approach for this fight. When you look at OSP over the years, he's sort of established himself as a gatekeeper to the light heavyweight division. With no disrespect, he's got some cracking wins under his belt over the years, but I don't know. I think the best chance for Minefield is to sort of patiently sort of pick him apart and not be too aggressive early on. And with OSP, I think we're going to have to see the infamous Von Flue choke in this one. I think he's got to look for the submission on this one. I think with Minefield, like I said, he just cannot trade and stand with a guy like Minefield who has the ability to knock the living daylights out of you within a heartbeat. So with that sort of department, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm gonna go for an OSP via third round submission. It's wild, it's crazy, but I'm so torn on this one, mate.
It's not that crazy, honestly, because I think if you're gonna take OSP, it's gonna be in the second or third, honestly, in my opinion. Even though the first round seems to be the most common, the easiest to sink in a lot of these submissions. But Alonzo's so dangerous in the first round that after round one, if he doesn't go crazy and he doesn't gas, maybe that's the only way this thing finds the decision, honestly, in my opinion. But my thought process was saying that I don't think it's getting decision is that I don't think he's going to come out and be overly cautious. I think he wants to come out, especially like you said, after his last fight. I think he's going to want to come out and just try to make quick work of this. And no disrespect to OSP, obviously. I think OSP will handle it well. I'm still just trying to decide whether or not Minifield gets it done in the first. I started with all the Tapology. I love the Tapology community. I mean, you just get such a wealth of picks and information. You see these the consistency really week in and week out through that in itself. And then I wrote myself to the side after watching Minfield's fights. It's just such TKO ability. I'm going to take Minfield by the first round KO. I'm going to just give the shot that it happens. Obviously, he holds the power in his hands. It's just a matter of getting it in close and getting the thing done. So Minfield by KO in the first round, which brings us to our main event, Frankie Edgar versus Pedro Munhoz. Frankie Edgar, one of the most storied UFC. I mean, it's just so many fights that are just legendary under his belt. Against Pedro Munhoz, it's a tough draw. Absolutely, it's a tough draw. We have got a thriller on our hands, I think. But Munhoz, to me, right now, is just in the prime of his career. He's just so sharp. I think he's the last guy that anybody in that division wants anything to do with. I've got Munhoz winning by KO. I hate to just make it that short and sweet to my boy Frankie Edgar. You know what I mean? I just have so much respect for him as a martial artist, and as you know, I did for Eddie Wineland when Sugar Sean's going into the fight, but it didn't change my prediction of what I thought was going to happen. And Frankie Edgar is even that next echelon above. I mean, he's UFC Hall of Fame in my opinion. But Pedro Munhoz, like I said, in his prime right now, and he looks sharp and dangerous.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. I think a couple of years ago when Frankie Edgar was in his prime, it's a no-brainer, really. You know, Frankie would probably mop the floor with Pedro. He's had some exciting moments in his career at lightweight, and he's had a couple of decent bouts at featherweight as well, but he felt as if it was his time to sort of go down in another weight class, which would be an interesting. I think, will he make weight? I know he's a small bloke himself, but will he make weight at 135? That'll be the interesting thing to see. He was originally supposed to make his debut at bantamweight against Corey Sandhagen, I believe, until he stepped in to face the Korean Zombie. We all know how that panned out. I think with Frankie Edgar, I don't know. You look at Munhoz right now, he's not the most devastating of strikers. Obviously, you know what to expect from Munhoz. His submission, BJJ, ground game is just second to none, but he does have that ability to sort of, he does have that striking tool in his arsenal. It's a weird one. You look at it against Cody Garbrandt, where Cody Garbrandt just literally let loose early on, but Munhoz was very precise and cool in his approach and managed to get the job done. And yeah, I've got nothing but respect for Munhoz. Obviously, he did lose last time out against Aljamain Sterling, but in my opinion, he deserves the next title shot. And just from watching some of Munhoz's interviews this weekend, he's so determined for this fight, and he believes with the win over Frankie Edgar, that'll put him in the mix for a title shot. And I'm been impressed with Munhoz recently, and I don't know. It's hard to. I'm leaning towards Munhoz in this one. I don't see Frankie Edgar winning on stage, which is a shame. I've got nothing but respect for Frankie Edgar, but I think you look at him in his last bout with the Korean Zombie, he just looked a bit. He didn't look like he belonged in there. With no disrespect, he just he mopped the floor with him, the Korean Zombie.
Right.
I think we will see a reasonably early finish, but I don't think we'll get a first round knockout. I think it'll be a second round TKO in the favor of Pedro Munhoz.
Yeah, and like you said, going down another weight class, one, already it's just proven that that's going to weaken your chin, and two, later in your career doing it, as you said, it's just it's the opposite of what most people do. And being that, I mean, it's just because most people can't do it that late in their career, but just because you can pull it off being a smaller guy doesn't mean that it's going to fare well. Yeah. I'm to foreshadow ahead a little bit. I see the same kind of issue could arise for Cody Garbrandt going down to fight Davidson Figueiredo. Does that tougher weight cut take a toll on your chin, and you get to go fight a guy who is comfortable and lethal at that weight? Garbrandt's a beast, man, in his own right, so it'll be fun to see, but we got a lot of fights to break down and get through before that one. So another fun card this week. I can't wait. And it's a two-man show for now, but I'm thinking that next week we're going to have another, one or two at least more on here. So quick 30-minute episodes, though, like we like to get them out, and hope that you guys, got something valuable out of this. We try to do a little bit of breakdown on here. James obviously brings it. I mean, the record speaks for itself. Like I said, 3-time now, back to back.
Got the champion match on.
Yeah, there it is. Nice. I love it. But yeah, as always, guys, appreciate you guys watching. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us at UFC Deluxe on Twitter and at Ann Gambling on Twitter. We're collaborating on a lot of stuff. Like James said, constantly trying to add good team members. So anybody that's into putting out kind of MMA, UFC content, sports gambling content, any of that kind of stuff that's in here in this related field, even, we love it. We're all part of the same team. So thanks again, James.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, mate. Cheers.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, take care.